That is a little bit disturbing, isn't it? Anyway, welcome back to another Paul's Aquariums video. In this video, I'm going to show you how easy it is to set up CO2. We're going to use a Dellua system for this, which is relatively new in Australia, but super cool and really easy to use. So the carpeting plant in this tank is Cuba, which is just a hemianthus. It's a small carpeting, easy to grow plant, but it does need a lot of light, a lot of nutrients, and the CO2 will give it a carbon form, which makes it grow crazy fast. Regulator and solenoid we're going to use is this little guy here. It is super compact, super awesome. Check it out on the bottle. And we're going to use a few other Dellua products, which makes it incredibly easy to do this. Anyway, we're going to open this up and show you what you get and how easy it actually is. Dellua has made everything super easy with their products. This is their CO2 regulator and solenoid. So the solenoid is that little black thing there with the cord. That is an electronic switch, which just means that it turns on and off with your power. So no power, it turns off the CO2 power, and then it releases the little valve and your CO2 goes through your system. So the regulator is the bit that hooks onto the bottle, and that tells you how much gas you've got and your pressure. And it has this cool little feature here, which is the bubble counter. And what a bubble counter does is counts bubbles. So you fill that up with water, then you'll see the CO2 bubbling through this little glass tube. It just tells you how much CO2 is going into your tank. You will also need one of these, and this is a stainless steel CO2 diffuser. It is a high pressured air stone as such, so it's got a little ceramic disc in there. You connect your tubing to this, and the high pressured CO2 pushes through this little ceramic disc, and you get a super fine mist of bubbles. The finer the bubbles, the longer the bubbles take to reach the surface, and because they are super fine as well, they absorb the CO2 into the water a lot better. So that's why you don't have just your normal air stones that you see with normal air pumps and that in CO2, because the finer the bubbles, the better the whole system's going to work. So this little kit from Dellua also comes with a couple of little suction caps, which is pretty straightforward. It comes with one of these cool little metal bits. And this is called a quick release valve, but it is also a one-way valve, which means that the CO2 goes through one way, but it won't go back the other way. And that is super important because at night you turn your CO2 off, and if you have it turned off, the water can siphon back through this little disc, back up the little pipe, and towards your actual solenoid valve. And that can damage the solenoid valve, the regulator, and all that. So that is a one-way valve that just stops that from happening. You also get this little U-bendy thing, and that's to go over the tank to just make everything nice and neat. So that is the stainless steel version. There is an acrylic version, which is exactly the same. Everything is the same except in acrylic, and it's about half the price, roughly, to give you an idea. So I think these ones retail for like, what, 60 bucks, and they're about 35 for one of those. Another thing you're going to need is a CO2 indicator, and this just tells you how much CO2 you've got in the water. It is the cool little glass things that you see attached to people's tanks with their fancy fish and their fancy plants, with the little coloured thing inside that little bubble. It just suction caps under the water level. You have air in here, you have an indicator solution that goes in here. I think you put like 10 mil or so in there. We'll go through that in this video. And it will change colour depending on how much CO2 you've got in the water. But roughly there's 3 different colours. There is blue, there is green, there is yellow. Blue, not enough CO2, yellow, too much CO2, and green is just right. So it's pretty straightforward, but they make a huge difference with telling you how much CO2 is in your tank. The last thing you're going to need, apart from the bottle obviously, is your high pressure PVC tubing. This stuff is like your normal airline tubing, but a lot denser, a lot thicker. But because our CO2 is under pressure, you're not going to lose any CO2 getting pushed through little membranes in the tubing. So normal airline tubing will work, but you are going to lose a little bit of pressure, which means that a lot of CO2 is going to come out of the tubing and not go directly into your tank. So anything like this is going to make a huge difference, and I think you can get 3 meters of it for like about $7 or so. That brings us to our bottles. So Dellua does not have any CO2 bottles currently at the filming of this video. They probably will eventually. So we're going to use this lovely Dimax bottle. So this is a 2-litre Dimax bottle. As long as you've got a fitting that looks something like that, your regulator is going to go on top of it. So CO2 bottles are obviously sold empty. They don't ship them with CO2 or anything like that because they are a dangerous flammable gas. So you can get these filled from any home brew shop or any gas place. We have this giant bottle, which, oh, if I bring that down, I probably should have moved the camera up. How about I just move the camera up? That's a little bit more sensible. That big bottle there, which is a 4-litre bottle, I think that's a 2-litre bottle, so that's actually double the size, even though It's not much bigger, is it? It's just rounder. That one you can hire or you can buy them, and then you can get them replaced with new gas, sort of like you do with your sort of gas for your barbecue and that from your home brew places. That will last a lot longer because obviously it is double the amount of gas than one of these, but it depends on which one you want to go for. So there is lots of different options, hiring them, buying the bottles, or buying the bottles and swapping them over and that. So gas, solenoid valve, diffusery thing, something to tell you how much CO2 you've got, and your tubing. That's pretty much all the basics of what you'll need. What we're going to do now is open this guy in the box and see what we have. And it's the excitement of opening new things, just like Christmas. Okay, so you get vague instructions and information. Well, actually you get quite a decent amount of instructions. Look at that, it's even color. Ooh-ah. Okay, tells you what to do, what not to do, which is pretty much everything we're going to do in this video. Not the not to do bit, but the how to do things. Otherwise you would not be watching this, would you? Okay, so that's what you get in the box. It's pretty straightforward. How does it all come out? Wow, that is a tiny, tiny little solenoid. So that is your electronic switch there. Obviously there's a little terminal bit here, so there'll be some cord that plugs into there. That is that bit. We have our regulator. Come on, there he is. So that is our regulator. That is our little one-way pluggy in thing. So that is what the actual bubble counter pushes into. That is designed to be pretty much just screwed onto the bottle hand tight. So you don't use tools or anything like these for anymore because the pressure actually holds the whole thing with the O-ring in place. I know, it is super bizarre. So you get a couple of little things that'll tell you how much CO2 you've got and your pressure in the whole system. And then that there is your CO2. So it's more or less. So on and off, obviously. Pretty straightforward. That is tiny. It is a very nice little simple system. And we have a power adapter, so it is going to be super low wattage. And what else have you got? That is our little bit that hooks from that to our solenoid. Oh, my fingers are too big for this. And you get a little screwdriver-y thing. So I'm pretty sure you get that, so you can actually, yeah, you can open this and fiddle with it if you really want to. Do we want to do that? No, we don't want to do that. There'll be a reason why you need to do that. That looks like it just plugs in one way. Yep, so there you go. So you've got that little tiny bit up the top, which will just hook in there. And then that plugs into your transformer. So when you have your power turned on, that will automatically open the valve inside here and your CO2 is going to pass through. That will just push down into there until you hear a click, and we heard a click. That is it. That is our little regulator. Very simple, very small. This little bit will unscrew. So with your water out of this, ideally you want to use RO water or something that doesn't have any minerals and stuff to it, because if you have any contamination in this water, if it does go through and end up going through that actual little ceramic disc, that can stop your ceramic disc from pumping the CO2 through. So in there you've got your little bit where you can see the bubbles are going to come out. With that, you want it about 2/3 filled with water. You don't really want it right up to the top, but you just want enough water so you can see your bubbles going through this. And ideally you want 1 or 2 bubbles per second with that. Okay, now that that is all ready to go, we are going to put this on our bottle. We've decided we're going to use this big bottle here, which is our 4-litre bottle. I wonder if I can do this one-handed. I will need 2 hands to tighten this up, obviously. So when you screw it on like that, you want to have this bubble counter vertical, otherwise it's not going to work. So we're just going to hand tighten that and we'll be back. Okay, it is hand tight. It's the moment of truth. There we go. That's what you want to hear. You just want to hear a dong, and you don't want to hear gas seeping out of anything. Gotta love pressurized gas. So with your little bit on the side, you roughly want that little dial, and if we can zoom in, we can probably see it. There we go. We've zoomed in. You want that ideally in green, and there's another little dial on the top that'll give you your pressure. You want that in the little green zone as well. Well, let me zoom back out so you can see where I'm pointing. So as long as it's in green and there's no hissing sound, you are good to go. So now that we've got our regulator and our solenoid sitting on the bottle, we are now going to pull apart our other bits and pieces. I'm just so high tech, aren't I? Here are our other bits and pieces. So it's obviously our diffuser and all the other little bits and fun stuff So you get a lot of packaging in these. Hopefully there will be instructions or something. Oh no, no instructions. Oh look, there's the instructions on the box. So if you're going to be bothered reading that, you're probably not going to watch this video. And there he is. Isn't that lovely? So, high pressured ceramic disc. I think this whole disc you can replace, so it does come out as well. You will get algae and detritus and stuff build up on that over time, but you can bleach water solution it. Some people scrape the top layer off, but that will damage the disc over time, so probably don't do that. And then your bits and pieces, there is our one-way valve. So the big piece here goes towards the tank. So there's a weird little symbol on it, and I have no idea what that symbol says. I don't know. But the big bit and the smaller bit, you want it going towards the tank. So the CO2 will go through that way, but it won't go back the other way. You get a weird little band. That's interesting. Now, we don't actually know what this band does, so we're going to figure that out because we have not read the instructions. But to me, that looks like it's probably going to go over this. If it fits, that means where it's going to go. Yes, okay. So I reckon it goes over that just in case that twists around and it taps your glass tank, because that's going to be sitting right down the bottom, suction cap to your tank. If something hits it and it goes like that, like a big fish or something, not that you're really going to be having big fish in a heavily planted tank, because yeah, it won't be heavily planted for long, will it? That can break your tank, and I think that is just what that is. If it is for something different, it's going to be on the screen now. If there's nothing on the screen, I guessed right. Let's hope I guessed right. So our little suction caps will just click in place like that. So you can use one or two on this bit and one on the tubing up the top. But all we're going to do with this is connect our tubing from that to, oh, and we haven't even opened that little bit up yet. There it is. There's our little U-bendy thing. So we're going to connect tubing from this to the U-bendy thing, and then tubing from this to our one-way valve, which is that bit there, and then that tubing goes all the way to our bubble counter. It is pretty straightforward, so let's get it all assembled on the tank and show you exactly what it should look like. So when you turn the solenoid valve on, you'll have that little tiny red light go on as well. Guess it's going on. So that just pretty much tells you that there's power to the electronic switch. So what we're going to do now is this little knobby bit here, which is hidden behind there, but you can kind of see that. That will regulate how many bubbles we have coming up here. So you only want to turn it on a tiny little bit. It's going to take a little while for the pressure to start to build up. You roughly want to go about 1 bubble per second. So that's a little bit slower than what we want, but it still has to push all the pressure through the little disc in that. So it's going to look like this for a little while. So you want to give it about 5 or 10 minutes and then sort of come back, because if you turn it too many bubbles like this, you're going to get a lot of pressure build up and you can actually blow some of the seals, which is not what you want to do. So we've jumped about 10 minutes or so, and we've been fiddling with it every sort of 5 minutes, so only a couple of times really. That is our CO2 coming out of the disc. It looks like a fair bit of CO2, but those are super, super fine bubbles. What I might need to do is move it a little bit away from this filter. The filter is pushing the CO2 around, but I don't want the CO2 to get sucked into the filter, because that's going to hinder the nitrifying bacteria with the oxygen content in there. So I do want the bubbles to be pushed around a little bit, but we don't want our filter sucking in all our CO2. With our bubbles and our bubble counter, we've got roughly about 1 per second. We can turn that down a little bit, but that is just going to give you a rough idea of how easy it is to set it up. Let's jump to the plants. And now that we've got our CO2 all set up, once our water is balanced, we are going to start planting it out. So I'm just going to use this. These are tissue culture hemianthus, which is just known as Cuba. It is a small carpeting plant. Tissue culture just means there's no algae, there is no snails, no nasties. It is a cool little plant. So when you get tissue culture like this, and if we just try and pull them out, come on, without breaking them up, it comes with a gel. So that gel, you want to just break apart in some water in like a little container to get rid of as much gel as you can, because that is a high amount of nutrients. And if you just plant it like that in your tank, all that gel is going to break down, dissolve, and that's going to cause algae blooms and all sorts of stuff. So once we've washed all this out, we're going to break it into little tiny parts, and then we're going to plant it in our tank. Hoorah! And an easy way is just take half the water out before you plant your plants, add a little bit of sand or a small amount of substrate on top of them just to anchor them in, and within a few days the roots are going to start to grow into the substrate. So this is the finished product. We've had a little gap around each plant, but that'll grow in, and let's jump to a week's time. And just like that, we have jumped. So this is about a week later. All our plants are starting to sort of spread those little gaps that you can see there. And this is roughly about the start of the ugly stage. So the ugly stage is the plants haven't actually grown into the substrate yet. So they're just starting to set their little runners and little bits and pieces out. So they haven't grown enough to absorb a lot of the nutrients. So you're going to get a little bit of an algae bloom. So we've got a small amount of green algae growing on our tree, which kind of looks cool, but that will get out of hand if you don't fix that. And we've got a little bit of algae growing on the glass. I don't know if you can see that there, right in front of the screen right now. Very, very normal for that to happen in a new tank. So what we're going to do is we're just going to siphon a little bit of that algae off and give it a gentle scrub. That's going to go into the filters. We're just going to clean a little bit of the sponges out, just to remove that from the system. So we've probably got another week or two before these actual plants hit the substrate layer down the bottom, because their roots will grow very, very quickly, and then they're going to start to suck up a lot of nutrients. So at the moment, the algae is growing faster than the plants are, and this is sort of the stage where everyone kind of gives up because they get a massive algae bloom just feeding off all the excess nutrients before the plants sort of kick in. Don't worry about that. You can reduce the light if you want, but it's a little bit easier to just siphon the little bits of algae. So we're going to do that, and we're going to jump back. And we've got a good 90% of the algae removed from the tree, which is a good thing. Yes, I've missed a few bits, but I'm a little bit slack when it comes to that. But if we do have a close look at our driftwood, we can see the white film growing all on that. That is non-toxic, but it does mean that there's a lot of nutrients seeping out of the wood. So you can see that little dangly bit right there. Looks like a sort of a clear fungus, but it is just biofilm. Non-toxic. It is just going to disappear over time, but the longer you soak your wood before you put it in your aquarium, the less likely you're going to get that sort of stuff. So we've got a Wooder White, we had a Wooder White bag. Who's a little Wooder White bag? Yes, cut. And that is Dimax Clear Mix. It is a man-made polymer. It comes in a little bag. You can put it in your filtration, but because we've only got it there for a couple of days, it will absorb phosphates, nitrites, a whole lot of other chemicals in the water, and you can recharge that as well with a bleach and water solution or a saltwater solution. Really, really great product if you want to just get rid of nutrients out of the water when you've got excess nutrients, which we do now. So now we're at this stage. It's pretty much cycled. We have gone for our ammonia, our nitrite spikes. This is probably about, a good 5 weeks into this aquarium to give you an idea of timelines. Our water is balanced, so we have our pH where we want it to be. So we're going to add fish in the next week or so. So the reason we don't have fish in there at the moment is mainly because we want these plants to grow, get their roots in. So when we do add fish, they're not going to rummage around and dig up all our plants. So you'll see a lot of aquariums like this that start off planted, no fish whatsoever, and that is the main reason. So you can add fish once the water's stable and ready to add your plants, but a lot of people will just do the plant system first. There is our drop counter there, perfect on green. Green or greeny yellow is the ideal. That just means that there's a high concentration of CO2 in the water. Obviously, you turn your CO2 off at night, which I don't think I've even said in this video. Whoopsie. Because the plants only take up CO2 in the daytime and produce oxygen at night. So if you have your CO2 going at night, plants will take up oxygen, your fish will take up oxygen, plants will pump out CO2. The CO2 in that will pretty much crash your tank. So that is why we have the solenoid valve, so you can turn that off at night with your lights. So it has been a good 6 weeks now, and I am pretty impressed with how good this works. It is simple. There are very, very few parts that you need to buy apart from the regulator kit with the solenoid, which comes with the bubble counter, and the little kit that comes with just about everything else. So really it's only 4 things. It's the solenoid kit, it is your little tiny pressurized disc bits and pieces, it is your drop checker, and the tubing. Makes it really, really easy, so you don't have to stuff around with multiple things. As I said before, this is just connected to this bottle, but you can use whatever bottle you want. So technically 5 things if you count the bottle. But yeah, super impressed with it. It's very easy to use. On the timer, it just comes straight back on, and it doesn't take very long for the CO2 to actually pump into the tank. So yeah, works perfectly fine. I do recommend this because it's easy and it's fun and it looks good. So what else could you want? I think I've got everything in this video. If I've missed a few things, feel free to comment down below and I'll get back to you. Otherwise, we will see you in the next video. There are things on the screen to watch, so enjoy, and we will see you then.